Doctors touched dying men while wearing lead aprons, not to protect the patients, to protect themselves. When they died, ordinary graves wouldn't do. Coffins lined with lead, graves capped with concrete. Why would a human corpse need a lid tomb? To answer that, rewind to the explosion. 1:23 a.m., April 26, 1986. During a botched safety test, Reactor 4 exploded. The blast hurled the 2,000-ton lid off the core. Burning graphite and fuel rained across the plant. They called it a fire, just a fire. Nobody believed a Soviet core could ever explode. Minutes later, the first firefighters arrived. Cloth uniforms, leather boots, nothing between them and an invisible hell. Their dosimeters told them nothing. The low-range meters pinned to maximum, while the high-range ones were missing or locked away, blind in the radiation. Lieutenant Provic led his crew up, onto the roof, straight above the burning core. Chunks of graphite and reactor fuel littered that roof. Each piece could deliver a lethal dose in minutes. But what does radiation actually do to a body? To understand the graves, understand the damage. Radiation is energy from unstable atoms decaying. Some of it smashes clean through living tissue. Gamma rays and neutrons act like microscopic bullets. They break the chemical bonds holding your cells together. The most fragile targets, your fastest dividing cells, bone marrow, gut lining, skin, hit hardest of all. Dose is measured in grays. Around 4 to 5 grays, whole body, without treatment, and roughly half of people die. On that roof, the men absorbed lethal doses in under an hour. The clock was already against them. Some men tasted metal on their tongues. A strange warmth spread across their faces. Something was wrong. Then, within minutes to hours, several men doubled over and vomited. That's acute radiation sickness announcing itself. And yet they kept working. Hoses unrolled, water arcing onto flames that barely flinched. But water was almost useless. The real fire was graphite, glowing above 1,000 degrees. That burning graphite acted like a chimney. It lofted radioactive smoke high into the black sky. But the smoke wasn't the immediate killer for them. Look down. The danger lay at their feet. Here's the crucial distinction. Irradiation versus contamination. Get this, and everything else makes sense. Irradiation is exposure from outside, like standing near an X-ray beam. Step away, it stops. Contamination is different. Radioactive material physically lands on you. Dust, soot, particles clinging tight. So an irradiated person is dangerous only near the source. A contaminated person carries it everywhere. On that roof, the firefighters were both irradiated by debris and coated in radioactive fallout. Fine dust settled on their skin, soaked into sweat-drenched clothes, clung deep in their hair, and they breathed it in. Every gasp through the smoke pulled hot particles inside them. What were these particles? Iodine-131, cesium-137, strontium-90, names that would haunt their bodies. Each finds a home. Iodine hits the thyroid, cesium spreads through tissue, strontium invades bone. Now settled inside, they never rest. These isotopes irradiate you from within, every hour, everywhere. By dawn, the worst-hit men could barely stand. Their skin was reddening, like a terrible sunburn. But this wasn't heat. No flame touched them. Radiation itself had destroyed the living cells inside their skin. Rushed first to Pripyat's small hospital, then flown urgently to Moscow's Hospital No. 6. That hospital was no ordinary ward. It was the Soviet Union's specialized center for radiation medicine. Then the numbers came back, doses in the tens of grays, far, far beyond survivable. Their uniforms? Too dangerous to keep. Every scrap was sealed away as radioactive waste. They scrubbed and washed the men. It didn't fully help. Particles stayed lodged in skin and organs, so doctors confirmed a chilling fact. The patients themselves were now emitting measurable radiation. Think about that. A nurse tending to a heavily contaminated patient could absorb dose minute by minute. So the staff adapted. Heavy lead aprons went on. Time at each bedside was strictly rationed. Meanwhile, inside their bodies, the sickness advanced, brutal, predictable, stage by stage. First nausea and vomiting, then cruelly, a quiet lull, the latent phase where they felt better. But that calm was a lie. Deep in their bone marrow, the real damage kept mounting silently. Bone marrow builds your blood cells. Radiation had switched those factories off, completely. No fresh white blood cells meant no defenders. The immune system collapsed. Infections poured in. And with no platelets to clot, the bleeding began. Deep inside, unstoppable. Then the gut lining vanished. another fast-dividing tissue wiped away. Fluid poured out uncontrollably. Devastating. Doctors fought back. Bone marrow transplants. Some marrow flown in from across the entire world. An American doctor joined them, Robert Gale. He helped transplant marrow into the very sickest patients, but the highest doses defeated them. New marrow couldn't save a body destroyed everywhere else. Meanwhile, the skin burns worsened, turning black, dying tissue peeled away in terrible sheets. Some men were burned across almost their whole bodies, not by flame, by radiation. How? Beta particles from contamination clinging to their skin had cooked the tissue outside in. Firefighter Vasily Ignatenko was among the first on that roof. He deteriorated over agonizing days. His wife Lyudmila visited anyway, despite warnings, unaware how radioactive he had truly become. Doctors and nurses feared for anyone spending long hours near his bedside. Ignatenko and 27 others in that first wave died within weeks of the explosion. But their deaths created a problem no ordinary funeral could ever solve. Why? Normally, when a person dies, their body decays and returns harmlessly to the earth. But radioactive isotopes don't die with the person. They keep decaying. Years, even centuries. Take cesium-137. Its half-life is about 30 years, dangerous across an entire lifetime. And strontium-90, lodged inside their bones, it would keep emitting radiation for decades. These weren't just corpses anymore. Each body carried a long-term radioactive burden. An ordinary wooden coffin? It offers little shielding. Radiation would pass through the planks into ground and air. Worse still, rainwater seeping into a normal grave could leach radioactive material into the groundwater. Grieving families couldn't hold their loved ones. No village cemetery, no open casket, no goodbye. So how do you bury a human being who has become, in effect, nuclear waste? Physics had the answer. The very same shielding used to contain radiation inside labs and reactors. To block gamma rays, you need density. Atoms packed tightly, leaving almost nowhere for radiation to slip. Denser materials carry more electrons per volume. More electrons means more chances to absorb and scatter gamma. Enter lead, extraordinarily dense, yet relatively cheap and easy to cast. That's why it's a standard shield. Just a few centimeters of lead can slash a gamma beam to a small fraction. It's the same reason hospital X-ray rooms and reactor casks are wrapped in heavy lead. Soviet authorities applied that exact logic to the firefighters' remains. The same shielding, now for human beings. Their bodies were sealed inside coffins lined and reinforced with lead, built to trap the radiation. But lead alone wasn't enough. Not for remains this contaminated. They needed something more. So the lead coffins went into graves, then were sealed beneath a thick layer of concrete. Concrete added mass, blocked more radiation, and made sure no one could ever disturb the sites. In a quiet corner of Moscow's Mitino cemetery, these men were laid to rest together. These weren't ordinary plots. Each grave was handled as a radioactive burial site. Families begged to bring their husbands home. The answer was no. No traditional funeral. The state ran every burial, partly for safety, partly to keep the disaster hidden. Lead and concrete would hold the radiation in place for as long as it lingered. Now every thread ties together. The roof, the contamination, the half-lives, the shielding. These firefighters didn't just take a fatal dose. They absorbed radioactive material into their tissue. That material stayed put, locked inside their bones and organs, even after death. So what happens when a body like that decays? Those isotopes can escape into the environment. Their remains could contaminate the soil, taint the water, and harm anyone standing too close. An ordinary burial would have turned each grave into a slow, silent radiation leak. Only a dense barrier could reduce the gamma rays their bodies still emitted. And only a sealed, permanent tomb could keep the contamination from ever escaping. The same physics that shielded reactors now shielded the world from the men who fought them. They were buried in lead under concrete because their bodies had become long-lived radioactive sources. 28 of these early responders and workers died of acute radiation sickness within weeks. Their sacrifice bought precious time. Others moved in to entomb Reactor 4 in concrete. Picture it. Had the fire spread to the neighboring reactors, the catastrophe could have multiplied. Today, those lead-lined graves still stand behind fences in Moscow. Quietly, they remain slightly radioactive. Think about that. These may be among the only human graves built to nuclear waste standards. They ran toward the light on that roof. In death, no ordinary funeral could hold them. Remember their names.